Central Virginia. Are you ready to rumble? Fasten your safety belt and hold on tight. The community watchdog is in the house. This is The Schilling Show with your host, former city councilor Rob Schilling, on News Radio 98.9 and AM 1070 WINA.
Rob Schilling's a freedom fighter. He's a brave man. He's an honest man.
Hey, it's a Manic Monday edition of The Schilling Show. First off, the date April 13th, significance, even though the city doesn't want you to know, cultural significance as the birthday of Thomas Jefferson. We'll say it again, the birthday of Thomas Jefferson, without whom the people in City Hall and others who oppose celebrating this day would be living in a totally different world, and not for the better. And on a personal note, my wife's birthday, so happy birthday to Joan, sharing a birthday with Thomas Jefferson. And it used to be in this community that my wife would get fireworks on her birthday because of the coincidence. However, I don't think they're doing that anymore. Oh, well. All right, coming up on today's program, Steve Moore, presidential advisor, noted economist, former member of the Wall Street Journal editorial board on the economic consequences of the coronavirus. Also, James Banks joins us, and Hope Lies Ahead is the book, Encouragement for Parents of Prodigals, from a family that's been there. And I know just in my own situation, dealing with hopeless situations of close family members or family members that are a little bit out of the immediate family, that you got to have hope, that it's a very rough road. And James Banks will bring us some hope later on in today's program. I told you, for those of you who were following us online at Facebook, friends on Facebook, and I made a nice little pretty banner there this morning and put it up online and asked people to share it, because I want to make sure that people hear this major announcement from my own mouth and in my own words. And before I make it, I've got to spend a little bit of time with you just giving the backstory, telling you about how all of this came to be. That would be me sitting here, and where we go from here. So let's go to it right now. First of all, I just got to say I appreciate this listening audience. You know, you have been loyal and faithful. You have been fierce in protecting this program over now in our 13th year, and a couple times, and I'll get to those in a few minutes, what I would call bumps along the road, things that happened that interrupted the flow of this program from my very early days here at WINA, which go back, I think, to 2007, if not 2006, kind of hard to remember now. But anyway, 2007 probably. And that's a long time ago. In many ways, it seems like worlds away. My road to this program was very, very interesting, and it's one that I never envisioned. It was a trip that God had for me that I didn't plan to take. You see, I've been listening to talk radio since I was a teenager, and I would have the radio on overnight in my room at home, and I learned that from my grandmother, who used to listen to news radio, and she just had the radio on all night. I'm like, that's kind of cool. And although I was interested in music during those years, I had on talk because I found it interesting, and then I would just fall asleep to it. But huge talk radio fan for all my life, for all of my teenage to adult life and through today. I talk often about the late, great George Putnam. I still get misty-eyed when I think about all those years I listened to George broadcasting between the hours of noon and 2, fearlessly going after local governments. I learned a lot of what I do here and took a lot of my strength from listening to George all those years ago in Southern California on KIEV and then KRLA. And in the early years of this program, I used to play little snippets of George, particularly when he remembered Ronald Reagan. He was a personal friend at Reagan's passing. So you know when I say every once in a while about George Putnam, how influential that program was to this one. Well, I came to Virginia never thinking I'd have a chance to wind up in radio, even though I was so interested from listening to George all those years. I thought that would be a really fun thing to do, and I never saw a path to it. It so happens that when I ran for re-election for Charlottesville City Council, and during all those years of service, those 4 years, and during the election time, I was a guest on this radio station many, many times. I was a monthly guest here, I think, over all those years. and enjoyed it a lot. I spent a lot of time. I always came into the studio. I didn't phone it in. And it was at the time Dick Mountjoy and Jane Foy doing the morning show here, and I had a good relationship with both of them. So the station knew me, and we had a very good relationship here. But I still never thought that I saw the possibility of being able to be a part of this radio station and no less having a program of my own, The Schilling Show. Didn't see it happening at all. Just didn't seem possible. And so I ran for re-election in 2006. I didn't make it. And I thought, what is this all about? Because I really prayed hard about it, and the message I got loud and clear was you got to run for re-election. And I heard from people and mentors in politics, if you run away, even though there's never been a two-term elected Republican in Charlottesville, if you go away, people will think less of you because you're a hero in this position. I didn't really think of myself that way, but I kind of understand it in retrospect, how people looked up to me as an elected Republican who was willing to stand up and push back amidst chaotic government that was happening in Charlottesville back in those times. Gosh, it seems downright placid today. But I gained a lot of fans, and I'm grateful for them and for you. And you, many of you listening right now may still be out there who were back then fans and supporters of me in my political career. So when I lost that re-election bid, and I got more votes than I did the first time, but I still lost. They knew turnout was the key in an at-large election. I started thinking, what am I supposed to do? Why did this just happen? It was not but a few months later that question was answered, when my friend Rick Daniels, who used to work at this radio station, and he used to say to me, hey, you ought to be in radio. And my friend Jay James contacted me and said, would you like to come on the radio? And I thought, wow, my goodness, really? That would be wonderful. How did I ever get an opportunity like this? It just fell into my lap. And I thought, okay, this was the purpose of everything. Had I just run away and decided not to run for office again, nobody would have been interested. It would have been like, there goes another quitter. I had to run and suffer what in many ways was the humiliation of losing to rise again, like a phoenix from the ashes, in this radio station, in this place. And so I started up back then. I'm guessing it was in 2007. It's been so long, I can't remember, but somewhere around there, coming on the radio on Saturdays and then Sundays, doing 6 hours, 3 hours on Saturday and 3 hours on Sunday on the WINA morning show, weekend edition. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't know how to get guests. But it so happened that at that time, Dick Mountjoy, who I mentioned earlier, who was the morning host, was quite ill. And Jay James had been filling in for Dick Mountjoy for quite a long time. And Jay, of course, had his hands full. And Jay needed some relief. And Jay called me up one morning. I think I'd been on the air for, maybe a month or 2 months of weekends, and said, hey, would you like to come in to the temporary position and take over for Dick Mountjoy, for me taking over for Dick Mountjoy? And I thought, my goodness, from a guy who has no idea what he's doing it about 2 months on the weekends or whatever time it was, to come in here to what at that time was probably the most listened to radio program in this market with Dick and Jane. Everybody was listening. And to come in here and work with Jane Foy as the host of the program. It was really remarkable. It was announced to me that was going to be a temporary position, maybe 2 to 3 months, and then I'd kind of go back to weekends, and that'd be how it was. But there were different things that happened that I didn't foresee. And so the 2 to 3 month gig stretched out for, it was about 10 months. And I got a little notice towards the end of that time that my time was wrapping up on the morning show. They don't normally tell you these things in advance. Normally it's a surprise on a Friday afternoon and you're just gone. Well, they said, we're going to give you a couple weeks and then we're going to do something new. I said, okay, I've had my time here. I did 10 months. It was good. And I thought, okay, we'll see what's up next. We'll see what's in store next. Well, very interestingly, when I was off the air, and I think it was on Memorial Day weekend, Labor Day weekend rather, And they came back on that Tuesday with Rick and Jane in the morning, and everyone's like, where's Rob? The phone started going nuts here at WINA, at the front desk, at the manager, and at the WINA phone number here. Where's Rob? Where's Rob? I had no idea that I had built up a constituency in those 10 months. I just didn't have a sense of it. And people were very upset that I was gone. Well, they wanted me to come back on the weekends. And, you know, we had at that time, Caroline was about to come into the world. I'm like, I can't do that on weekends. And so we had about 3 months of a vacation between me and you, between me and this radio station, as I left the morning show. And then all of a sudden, Renee Quisenberry, who was managing the station at the time, started calling me, and she was talking with Ed Christian, who owns Saga Communications, still is the owner of this company. And we started negotiating, and we negotiated that I would come on the air with my own program, The Schilling Show, right here at noon for 2 hours. We'd start out with 1 hour, and then we'd go to 2. And so it was in January, I think, of 2008 that I came on with The Schilling Show with 1 hour, between the hours of 1 p.m. and 2 p.m., as I recall. Maybe it was noon to 1. No, it was 1 o'clock, because I used to say 1 o'clock is the new 12 as people join us for The Schilling Show. Well, that lasted for about a year, and then it was Christmas week, or the week before Christmas, on a Friday afternoon, that I got a call into Jim Principe, who was then the presider over this group of radio stations, into his office. It's never a good thing to get a call into the manager's office on a Friday afternoon. And Jim Principe said, you know, and Rick Daniels was sitting right there, the operations manager, said, you know, we're getting ready for the firestorm. We know it's going to happen. But we got to let you go. Times are tough. Economics are tough. We got to let you go. Well, the firestorm happened again, this time with even more intensity, as advertisers said goodbye. The people selling ads here were pressuring the corporate because, you know, that's their bread and butter. And when people who are advertising start leaving because they're upset over a programming decision, well, sometimes they rethink it. And so by God's grace, within 1 month, I was back here again with the full 2 hours I had been promised on the Schilling Show a year earlier. You see, it never came to fruition, but it did the second time. And I was restored to this seat back in, 2009? Maybe 2010, I can't remember. I lose track of all of this. And this program, since then, well, we've had a few bumps in the road. There's certainly been controversies. Gotten in trouble a couple times. There were people who didn't like what we had to say. There were some people they called the blue-haired goon squad who used to call up and complain. Rick Barrick, the bid rigger over at City Hall, used to call over here and complain about the editorials that I was doing on the air here. Because, you see, this city had never been challenged in a way that they were being challenged on this program. There was never anybody here who was speaking frankly from an insider's perspective. You see, I'd been 4 years inside that nest of hornets called Charlottesville City Hall. So I knew where some of the bodies were buried. They tried to conceal them from me by and large, but I figured a few things out in 4 years. So I was able to provide knowledgeable commentary, write investigative reports and deliver them on the air and publish them online. One of them, of course, on Rick Barrick, leading to his ultimate dismissal from employment at Charlottesville City Hall. The involvement of the Commonwealth's attorney in investigations into corruption. We've got it all documented. You see, this program became very relevant. When I came on the air, I remember Lisa Province, then at the Hook, and Lisa's a good friend now, but I remember her saying to me, how's your program going to be any different from what the Left Foot is doing in the afternoon? Just thinking, hey, there's another local show, another local guy. I said, this is going to be a program that focuses on advocacy. And over the years, how we have advocated for things. How I've worked so hard. You know, a lot of people don't realize that I'm usually up these days. If I'm lucky, I'd sleep till 5:30, but normally I'm up in front of the computer preparing for this program by 5 o'clock in the morning. It's not that I work straight through till 11 when I leave to come here, but a good chunk of that time is done researching and preparing. These interviews are not done off the cuff. They're not done in a way that's haphazard. I prepare. I read the books to the best of my ability. I do background research and study up on the guests so that I can interact with them well, because I want to present a quality program to you. So the amount of time you hear me on the air, you could at least double, if not triple that daily, because when I get home, then I start booking up for the next days and picking up on emails and so forth, to make this a program where the host is well prepared and knowledgeable. I never wanted to come on the air on this program, on the Schilling Show, and talk about things that I didn't know about. I was always uncomfortable about that, and so I wanted to make sure if I'm going to talk about something that I have good knowledge. Have I made mistakes over the years? Have I been wrong sometimes? Absolutely. But by and large, I believe I've met the goal in these 12 plus years, heading into 13 years on WINA. And I think I've been recognized for that. Recognized by coverage starting back in 2009 on Fox News, when I went on Fox and Friends for an investigative journalism story we blew wide open at Henley Middle School, some of this garbage that was being put up on the walls, indoctrinating students. And somehow the producers of Fox found out about it, called me up, sent a limo to the house, drove me over to UVA, and there I was on Fox and Friends with Brian Kilmeade and Steve. Wild, wild times. Stories that we broke that made it all the way over to the BBC. Stories that we broke when Tom Perriello said, hey, if you don't tie our hands, we'll keep stealing. Do you remember that one? Oh, my goodness. You talk about a firestorm. I mean, that was absolutely remarkable what happened with that story. And it's amazing. Let's listen to that.
If you don't tie our hands, we will keep stealing.
That little video that we produced, and thanks to Audrey Wellborn for capturing it, when Tom Perriello was shooting his mouth off, smug as he was, in front of a group of Tea Party people. And he said, if you don't tie our hands, we'll keep stealing. And we blew that story up, put it on the Schilling Show blog, this little tiny blog out of Charlottesville, talked about it on the radio, and all of a sudden I'm sitting here in the studio, my website's not functioning, and we find out that story has become national news, that it was picked up by Rush, by Sean, by Lars Larson, by every major host in the country playing that soundbite. And that happened a number of times over the years, that we landed stories right on the front page of Drudge Report, broken here from this little radio station and my home studio where I write and produce those stories that wind up on the Schilling Show, that many times over the years have made headline news across the country and around the world. Receiving awards from the Associated Press for investigative journalism, the Douglas Southall Freeman Award for community service, over and over and over again. And we weren't even submitting for the vast majority of years on this program. We didn't start submitting till 5 or 6 years ago. Just imagine all those years we missed. But recognized by those entities, the Virginia Association of Broadcasters, the Associated Press, for the excellence in what we produce here in this little radio station, this little tiny radio show that airs 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. Imagine that. So God's hand has been on this program, and we have not failed to talk about faith issues over the years, as we've had famous Christian authors, pastors that you would know worldwide have been on this program, advisors to the president. We talk about things that are important, not only things that are contemporary, but things that are eternal. And God has blessed me with the opportunity to do that. We've received no interference for that sort of programming on this show over the years. It's not something we do every day, but it's something that we do frequently. Just on Friday, we had Pastor Carl Gallups here on this program. And it was an amazing conclusion to the program, as it was Good Friday. And we decided that we would just give an altar call right here on the radio, which I really love. I told you that I had a big announcement, and I mentioned to you the Friday afternoon meeting that I was called into all those years ago when Jim Principe was here. Well, it happened again last Friday. I had a call into the office of the general manager of this station, and I kind of knew that something good was not going to happen as a result of that. And so the major announcement, and I thank you for staying with me. I mean, going to tell you right off the bat what the major announcement is. But the upshot of all of this is that because of the coronavirus situation and the economics of all of this, that the corporate entity has deemed that this program will be going down to 1 hour per day, that this host will take a harder hit on his own personal finances, harder than a halftime, but that I'm still here. I'm here from noon until 1 p.m. There's two things that I trust in all of this, and I've always said this along the way, and it's proven to be true. Number one, I trust the market. If there is a market for this program for 2 hours a day, then the market will respond. I have been here for a long time, and I've seen the market respond to this program when it was taken away, and I've seen that God put me right back here. So I trust the market in all of this, although the market's a little disrupted right now. But most importantly, I trust God. So if I'm meant to be sitting here for 1 hour a day, if I'm meant to be sitting here for 2 hours a day, He's going to sort it out. I don't have to worry about that. I just have to trust. I have to be smart about all of this, and I've got to tell you that I'm certainly brainstorming through options that this program could be restored to 2 hours because I think it's important for the community. You know how to make your voices heard if it's important for you, and I would encourage you to do so. And maybe it's not, and maybe you think you're happy that I'm only going to be here 1 hour a day. It doesn't matter. You can express yourselves, and you know how to do it. But I wanted to tell you in a very direct way so you don't hear it somewhere else. Some of you won't hear this. But many of you who tuned in today to hear the announcement that this program, effective immediately, will be running only for 1 hour. I am grateful for the time that I have here. I will use it to the very best of my ability. I will trust the market. And most importantly, I will trust God with the outcome of all of this.